History remembers the strong, the wise, the victors. But what of those who ruled too young, too boldly, or too briefly? What of those whose stories were twisted by enemies, both political and ecclesiastical? Among the kings of early England, few are as shrouded in mystery and myth as King Eadwig. He was a teenager with a crown, a ruler whose every decision seemed to ignite conflict, a lover accused of scandal, a monarch whose story was largely written by the very people who despised him. And yet, King Eadwig's life and reign reflect the struggles of an England still finding its unity. His short rule reveals a world of shifting alliances, bitter church rivalries, and the impossible weight of kingship thrust upon a boy. Today we bring his story out of the shadows. This is the tragic reign of King Eadwig, the forgotten young monarch of England. Here starts our Chapter 1. A child of the House of Wessex, Eadwig was born around the year 940 into the royal House of Wessex, a dynasty that had fought tooth and nail to forge a unified English kingdom. His father was King Edmund I, the son of Edward the Elder and grandson of Alfred the Great. The blood of empire builders ran through his veins, but the world into which Eadwig was born was anything but secure. The Danes still posed a threat. Regional lords were powerful and restless, and the church was fast becoming a force no king could ignore. Eadwig's mother, Elfgifu of Shaftesbury, was a devout woman. She would later be canonized as a saint. Her influence likely shaped Eadwig's early years which were marked more by loss than learning. When Eadwig was just 6 years old, his father was murdered, stabbed to death while breaking up a fight at a feast. The crown passed to his uncle, Edred, who ruled in Eadwig's place while the boy grew in the background. Chapter 2 is A Teenage King. In 955, King Edred died. With no children of his own, the crown passed to Eadwig, only around 15 years old at the time. England had a new king, barely old enough to grow a beard. It was a kingdom still recovering from decades of Danish invasions. The north remained uneasy. The great earls of Mercia and Northumbria were watching carefully. The church, led by powerful clerics like Archbishop Oda and Abbot Dunstan, had risen in prominence and expected royal favor. But Eadwig had a mind of his own. Accounts of his coronation suggest something strange, something telling. According to monastic sources, during the celebration, Eadwig vanished. The lords searched the palace and eventually found him. Not alone, but in a chamber with a young noblewoman named Elfgifu and her mother. The abbot of Glastonbury, Dunstan, reportedly dragged Eadwig back to the feast. It was a humiliation, a warning, and the beginning of a bitter feud. Now, Chapter 3. Love, Power, and Politics. Eadwig's relationship with Elfgifu is one of the most controversial aspects of his reign. Some say it was love, others say it was lust, but politically it was disastrous. Elfgifu came from a noble family with powerful interests. By marrying her, Eadwig aligned himself with a faction opposed to the growing influence of the church. It was a bold move and a costly one. Church leaders declared the marriage invalid, citing incestuous kinship, a claim modern historians often view with suspicion. It's likely that the church simply didn't want her near the throne. Eadwig ignored them, and in doing so, he made enemies of the most influential men in England. Archbishop Oda and Dunstan turned against him. Dunstan was forced into exile. Eadwig began to lose control over the court. What started as a king standing by his queen became a young monarch isolated, surrounded by whispers and plots. Chapter 4. A Kingdom Divided. In 957, just 2 years into his reign, the kingdom split. The earls of Mercia and Northumbria refused to follow Eadwig any longer. Instead, they declared their loyalty to his younger brother, Edgar. There was no battle, no siege, just a quiet, decisive break. Eadwig was left to rule Wessex in the south, while Edgar became king of the north. For the first time in decades, England was fractured again, one kingdom under two brothers. To some, this was a bloodless coup orchestrated by the church and the nobles. To others, it was a practical solution to a growing leadership crisis. Eadwig remained king in name, but in practice, his authority had crumbled. Chapter 5. The final years. Eadwig ruled the south for 2 more years. His marriage annulled, his allies dwindling. Even his coinage changed, reflecting a shrinking authority and reduced influence. Despite everything, there are signs that Eadwig was not entirely a failure. He continued royal grants. He maintained the royal court. He attempted, even in the face of overwhelming opposition, to govern. But the walls were closing in. On October 1st, 959, Eadwig died suddenly. He was no older than 19. No chronicler records the cause. Illness, perhaps, or heartbreak, or something more sinister. Poison has been suggested by some modern writers, though there's no evidence. He was buried in Winchester. His brother Edgar took the throne, and with him, the narrative. Chapter 6. History written by the clergy. Edgar the Peaceful ruled for over a decade, and oversaw a golden age of monastic reform. Dunstan returned now as Archbishop of Canterbury. The church held immense power, and it held a grudge. Chroniclers loyal to Edgar and Dunstan wrote Eadwig's history. They described him as lecherous, foolish, disobedient to the church, a cautionary tale of youthful folly. But modern historians are skeptical. Was Eadwig really as bad as they claimed? Or was he a young man trying to assert independence in a world dominated by older clerical men? His love life, once the source of scorn, now reads like a tale of forbidden affection and resistance against church overreach. His division of the kingdom, once painted as weakness, might instead reflect a more complex political compromise. Last but not the least, Chapter 7. A legacy lost and found today. Few remember Eadwig. He is a footnote between more famous kings, Edmund, Edgar, Ethelred. His reign, only 4 years long, is often skipped in textbooks. But in that short time, he sparked some of the greatest church-state conflicts of the era. He challenged the rising clerical order. He attempted to love who he chose, rule how he wished, and resist manipulation. And for that, he was punished. He died a king in name, but not in power, a monarch whose crown never truly fit. But his story, re-examined with the lens of modern history, deserves to be told. At the end, I want to say that King Eadwig's life was brief, turbulent, and tragic. But in those few years, he dared to rule on his own terms. He loved boldly. He resisted fiercely. And though history sought to erase or vilify him, we can now see the young man behind the myths. In the end, Eadwig was not just a failed king. He was a symbol of youth defiant against control, a heart that refused to be broken, and a reminder that history is often written by those who stood to gain from forgetting. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the past. If you found King Eadwig's story as compelling as we did, please like, subscribe, and share this video. Let us know in the comments, which forgotten figure from history should we uncover next? Until next time, keep questioning the past and discovering the stories that deserve to be remembered.